Jason Rogers, always great to see you, my friend.
Garth, it's good to be back. This season is starting off with a bang. I'm loving all of these episodes, and today's is not going to disappoint.
It is not going to disappoint, but it is not a book.
Well, it is a book, Garth. I want to correct you on this. Hey, listen,
Oh,
I wrote a book. This is my dissertation. 250 pages of academic research right here. And
I know. I just ordered it on Amazon.
yeah, right. I know. Thank you.
Hey, listen. Before we get to our amazing guest,
Yeah.
we turn the mic on each other in
Mhm.
this episode, as well as with our guest, Myke Healy, soon to
Correct.
be Dr. Myke Healy,
Yeah.
soon to be Dr. Head of School Myke
Yeah.
Healy.
Yeah.
Um, and we talk about a whole bunch of different pieces, including generative AI in education. But something has come up for me, Jason. When during the day do you do your best work?
Ah, first thing in the morning, as
Like what
early as
time?
I
What
can
time
go.
is that? What time
So
is that?
as quick as I can get myself up and out of bed and get the family organized. So it's about 5:45, and I'll work 5:45 to like uninterrupted. That's just my best work time. And then by 10 or 11 a.m., I'm pretty much done. My brain can't function that well after 11 a.m. And so I'm just more into like social connection mode, and my calendar set up to support that. Deep work in the morning, connection in the afternoon, onward. What about you?
I love it. I love it. Yeah, definitely the morning for me. I love the morning. I hadn't thought about it in that way in terms of like managing my calendar. I might use that. Myke mentioned, because we're talking about he's doing his doctorate. Myke
Yeah.
mentions this phrase. It's called eveningness.
Yes.
That is a quality that he has around his when it is peak mental acuity, and
Yeah.
he's doing some work between 10 p.m. to 2. I've already been asleep for an hour by the
Yes.
time Mike
I know.
Mike
I
starts working.
know.
So
I know.
I refer to as morningness,
Yeah.
morningness. But that is just one of the gems, listeners, you're going to get out of this conversation with Myke Healy. So we hope you enjoy.
Yeah. From chronotypes to computers, let's do this thing. Enjoy the show.
Lassoing leadership, sharp and true. Beard's Book Club got wisdom for you. Turn the pages, let the stories flow. Unpacking lessons as we grow.
Hey, folks, welcome back to Lassoing Leadership. Today, we're going to pause Beard's Book Club a little bit because we have an opportunity to speak to one of the foremost, I would argue foremost, forward-thinking voices in AI and school leadership. I've been learning with and alongside and mostly from Myke Healy, the assistant head of teaching and learning at Trinity College School, and soon to be head of school at St. John Ravenscourt, for a number of years. And Jason, I'm just so pumped to finally have Myke on the pod.
Yeah, this is a dream come true to have Myke in here with us. He's brilliantly been navigating the crossroads of generative AI and education, pursuing a doctorate at the University of Calgary. We're going to talk about that, exploring how AI integrity, academic integrity, and all these things come to play. The gap between student AI use and educational systems catching up. He's been presenting across Canada and around the world on these topics, and we're so fortunate to have him today on Lassoing Leadership.
Yes, and Myke, in the tradition of Lassoing Leadership podcast, we love to give our guests a moment to introduce themselves. What should our listeners know about Myke Healy?
Well, gentlemen, first, let me say how honored I am to be on the Lasting Leadership podcast.
Sure.
In Canada. You guys are great. I have such wide and deep respect for both of you and the work that you do. So you've done a good job of introducing me. I work at Trinity College School. I've been here for 21 years. And next year, as of July 1st, 2026, the incoming head of school at St. John's Ravenscourt in Winnipeg, which I am so excited about, such an incredible school to become a part of. And my work in schools is really informed by my scholarship, both when I started my master's degree in assessment and evaluation, and then into my doctoral work through the Workland School of Education at the University of Calgary, looking at the nexus of generative AI and academic integrity in K-12. And my research is specifically looking at how K schools are going to adapt to a post-plagiarism landscape as we have to change what it looks like for schools when human AI collaboration is the norm when it comes to written work.
Yeah, and you write a lot about this. So we're going to get into all of that, but you did mention sometimes you're traveling to Calgary. So I want to take a moment here to turn the mic on to both you and Jason. Jason, your doctorate is behind you. Myke, you're in the thick of it at the Workland School of Education in Calgary. So help our listeners decide. I mean, apart from the very different topics that you've chosen for your doctorate, is a doctorate worth the journey? So let's start with Myke. You're in it. Is it worth the journey? You've taken on your role is a lot already. You're taking on an even greater, deeper role at a new school. Tell us about why you think it's helping you, what the challenges are.
So I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
But there's serious caveats, because if I just said everybody should do it, then that would be, I think, not realistic, just in light of the commitment of time, finances, impact on other things that it takes. However, for me, I really liked doing my master's degree because, when you become a teacher through a B.Ed program, often you don't spend any time, or at least very little time, looking at the scholarly literature when you're doing a B.Ed. It's really about practice, which it needs to be. But then after you've practiced for a few years, maybe 5 or 10, then to actually go and look at the scholarship related to education, you realize how it enriches your practice to know the scholarship. The 2,500 years ago, the Buddha talked about that all the time, is that it's not just about learning about how to meditate. You have to meditate and then have the theory beside it. Like theory and practice go hand in hand if you really want to improve your just day-to-day practice in whatever field you're doing. And so I felt that down doing this doctoral work, it really informs my day-to-day because I'm constantly in the scholarly literature around education and what we need to do. When it comes to AI and education, we need to adapt as school leaders and what we're going to do with AI. And so to be on a day-to-day basis, looking at what that looks like in schools, and concurrently, I see looking at the literature and what people are writing in preprint and scholarly work around AI and academic integrity in schools, like the two of them are just so helpful together. It just informs my day-to-day practice in a way that I could never have dreamed of, really.
Myke, what's the hardest part right now for you with the doctorate, with pursuing the doctorate?
Yeah, I think I'm either fortunate or cursed with not a condition, but something called eveningness. This is actually a thing when one's biological rhythm is such that you meet peak acuity, mental acuity, between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. So I am doing my entire doctorate between the hours of sort of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. In the summer, there were some days where I was writing to 3, 4, 5, or 6 a.m. It only works in the summer because you have to join the rest of the world during the school year. But I find that in that really quiet, contemplative space, when there's no incoming messages or texts or emails or anything, to really get into writing and thinking and reading is this sort of almost this lovely scholarly space that I get why people do it.
Yeah, I guess then for me it'd be morningness. I'm most mentally acute in the morning. What's one thing you've discovered maybe about yourself, or maybe what's one thing you hope to discover about your research through this process, Myke?
I want that research to be sort of as useful as possible. I think sometimes doctoral work can get a sort of a bad name in the zeitgeist if people feel that it's not contributing to helping humanity or on a day-to-day basis. And I just feel very fortunate, I think, because of the professional nature of the Workland program. It's really for working professionals to tackle problems with their craft. And I think that totally makes a difference. I feel like what I'm doing is helping my school and K-12 generally. And so I feel like I'm a contributor.
Nice. All right, Jason, over to you. Is the doctorate worth the journey?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to compete with Myke's answers. I mean, they're so on point. I think it's entirely worth the journey if it's something you want to do and you want to achieve. I think that idea of not only understanding scholarly research, but also becoming a researcher yourself is quite validating. It's quite exciting to know that you can create scholarly work and put that into the world that potentially new for the world to understand, maybe have some level of influence. I think, many of us are learners who are in this business. I think all of us are. And it does focus our learning for a number of years. The University of Calgary program takes between 4 and 6 years to complete. And that opportunity to focus your learning for that amount of time and focus in on one thing that is so specific is really, really helpful, because so often we do lose focus in our work. And I don't know about you, Myke, but it's just the drilling in on a singular topic was so enlightening when it comes to understanding creation of knowledge. I'm enthralled by it. I loved the whole process, top to bottom.
And Jason, upon reflection, what was the most challenging thing for you?
Time. Like, I think you
Yeah.
both hit it on, like, we're talking about chronotyping, and I think Dan Pink wrote an extraordinary book on the topic called When. So if you want to know more about what Myke and Garth were talking about in chronotypes, Dan Pink just killed it in that book, talking about how we work, when we work, why we work in the ways that we do. And for me too, it was really about managing time and my own expectations. I think you get into a doctoral program, and I said this to Myke when he started his, was like, our ambition is to boil the ocean. It's to solve all of the problems of education in the area that we're working with our work. And it's just not possible, simply not possible. So I think by getting laser focused on the work that you want to do, finishing your dissertation, getting that into the world, and hopefully continuing with research in areas of passion, I think is the biggest thing. But it is a time commitment. I don't think, like, if anybody's saying to me, I want to do a doctorate in education, first thing I say is just make sure you're prepared for the time commitment, for the stress. There's a lot of stress that comes with it. There's a lot of, introspection, a lot of revisions that go into the work, as Myke, leading up to your candidacy. That's the hardest part. I don't think the thinking is that hard, frankly. I think the University of Calgary prepares you well to do the work, but it's a full-time commitment to get the work done.
Can I underscore something you said, Garth? Because I remember this day where I was when I had a conversation with Jason on the phone, and I was like, should I do this? And Jason said, look, like he said, you can't boil the ocean. And I had never heard that before. And I have repeated that to so many colleagues now in the EdD program, because I see it happening. They're the scope creep as they keep thinking, I'm going to do this and this and this. And realize, like, you got to just bring it down to something that's manageable and do it and get the job done.
Yeah, appreciate that. Now, I asked you the question, what's the hardest part? But in your answers, you've always you've referenced joy, right? You've referenced that it's very clear it's worth it, because you get these, as Jason was saying, you become not only a researcher yourself, but you're contributing to the additional academic theory and research. And then, Myke, you want it to be as useful as possible. So you both focus on, I think it's such a beautiful, segue to, like, servant leadership, which we talk about a lot, Jason, but this
True.
idea of serving leadership in a different way, in more of the theory. So that's great. Thank you, guys. That was great little discussion there.
Well,
Hopefully we've
Garth,
inspired some people.
And I hope that, like, the people who are thinking about this, and I run into them all the time, Myke, you probably will before too long, but I hope this does start the conversation on what it looks like to do a doctoral program, or look to get that degree, whether you do it at U of C or other programs such as Western or UBC. I think there's a lot of good options out there. And I think if you are inclined to want to understand research a little bit better and then give back to the world of research, I think it's a really, really excellent path to go down, as long as you're willing to take that on. I think, the second thing about this, I'm going to segue to the two of you. I'm going to turn the mic on the two of you, but you can't do it alone. I think that's what it comes down to. And my biggest gift in my doctoral kind of pursuit was Keith Vandermeer did alongside me. He was on season 1 of Lassoing Leadership, and I wouldn't have gotten it done without him. But that's not dissimilar in all of our professional work. So the two of you are moving into headships. Garth, you've already started. Congratulations. And Myke, you are counting down 12 months away, ready to get into it. And I think I'd like to turn the mic back on this group and just talk about headship for a second. So, Garth, I'm going to let you jump in first. I mean, what if this is like kind of a prospecting podcast in my mind? I mean, if somebody was thinking about moving towards headship, and you clearly did, what advice would you give them as they're moving in that direction? I've been asked so many times, I want to be ahead. How do I get there? What are the things I should do to achieve, this role? What are the steps you think? What advice would you give to somebody who's pursuing headship?
Oh, okay. I'll try and keep my answer as brief as possible. I think you have to really interrogate yourself to know that you're ready. So I think you have to, when you are in your current role, what are you curious about in your current role? And there is a drive. There is a bit of a cultural piece where it's like, oh, teacher to middle leader to administrator, administrator to senior administrator, like there's a pathway. But some of the people who I spoke with before I took this role, and some of the people I spoke to, throughout my career, have said, just make sure it's what you want and not what you are being driven towards. And so if you find yourself really curious about systems and structures and how they connect to your why you've been in education and the student lived experience, then you're on the right track. Because in senior administration as head of school, you get to uncover, discover, and maybe even change systems and structures, both visible and invisible. And so I think that's really important. That's the first thing you should do, is interrogate whether or not this is the right job for you. And I love when people say, I'm in the right role where I am right now. I have no desire to move onwards because I'm doing the work that fills me up, doing the work that challenges me and keeps me growing. Myke, what do you think?
Yeah, go for it, Myke.
I'd say, having a really good mentor as a head of school and seeing that and wanting to sort of take that inspiration. I certainly have that at Trinity College School with Stuart Granger, who's been a wonderful mentor to me, and also working with heads across the country through teaching and facilitating in the case LI. And Jason, I include you in that. I just see these great people and feel that I can contribute as part of that group, both to the school and to the wider case community.
Amazing. I mean, nobody forces you to apply for a headship. You're not forced to do this thing. I'm curious from the both of you personally now, like what compelled you to want to be head of school? It's a big job. It's got a lot of responsibilities and a lot of stress. Myke, maybe I'll have you start. When you were, you see the posting, someone might call you, and what was a chat you had with yourself that compelled you to hit send on that application?
Jason, for me, it's almost like every step that I've taken in my career, be it within schools or even doing sort of graduate work outside of school, is this continual desire to learn and do new things and build new skills and, be helpful and thoughtful and compassionate to others. It seems the head of school is this remarkable platform to be so helpful to so many people, kids and adults and alum, and even the community at large. And it just speaks to sort of my calling of what I'd like to do in terms of serving as a leader.
Amazing. Garth, what about you?
Well, Jason, I think you will remember that I did a course at Royal Roads, and we had the program facilitator on a couple of times in season one. And in that program, we had to articulate our leadership purpose statement. And so for me, this was like, it allows me, to fulfill my leadership purpose statement. So I feel like it's the right step. I feel like that was the compelling piece. So it's not just head of school, it's the head of school at Kingsway College School. Like that, there's such alignment with values and vision that it was really compelling enough.
Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction, Garth. I think, having that congruence when it comes to values. I mean, values generally are agreeable, I think, for the most part, but if they speak to not just your head, but also speak to your heart, I think you have a better chance of success in this rigorous role that you're both stepping into. I'm super excited for both of you. And I think, again, as an opening to a conversation, as people think about headship, I'd like to just put that offer out there. And I know Myke and Garth are the same. If you're curious about the path to headship, I mean, we're all here to support you through that. Garth, one of the things I was most excited about this podcast, obviously talking about doctoral work, talk about headship, but mostly I want to talk to Myke about AI. What do you think? Should we jump in on that?
Sure. One of the things which I loved when I took the case leadership module on the education program with Myke a couple years back, was the focus on AI, and you captured it really, really well. And so, when through the work with Cohort 21, we put on the CIS Ontario Connects Unconference, we needed a guest speaker. He was the first call to be a keynote, like the closing keynote. And in a theory of change, right, you need someone to really push you to support your imagination in all of this. And so listeners, that keynote is available. We'll talk about this more at the end, like where you can find Myke's work at the end of the podcast. But Myke stood up there in front of like 300 educators. Was like, hello, friends. I'm, and it was just, I'm going to scare you. I'm going to inspire you. But most importantly, I'm going to make you think. And it is a fantastic, fantastic keynote.
Agree.
It's on CIS Ontario website. But Myke, your research around generative AI, like around the curriculum, around social justice, around ethical use in K-12 education, how do you see it influencing your role as headship? Policies, teacher development, systems and structures, any or all of the above?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in schools, obviously, first, we can't hide from it. We have to adapt our educational system to the fact of this reality. What's interesting about generative AI, it's an arrival technology, which means that it's not something that schools chose. When laptops first came out, schools, had pilot projects and thought about it and, read the literature, should we do this or not? And they decided to bring laptops in, or they decided to wire the school for Wi-Fi or internet. And there was no choice with generative AI. November 30th, 2022, it just dropped. And on December 1st, students could then use a tool to do any written work that had been given to them by their teachers. And that is a fundamental, immediate change that school systems actually have not experienced ever to that degree. So it really is transformative. So we can't hide from it, but often we also realize now that if we just throw the doors open and say, okay, use AI however you like, then we're going to fundamentally lose the most important thing about educating students, which is their understanding to be critical thinkers, to make eye contact, to the importance of their own written work and their voice coming out. And so I think the ultimate challenge for school leaders is the middle path, is both recognizing we have responsibility to teach the ethical use of technology, and yet at the same time, we have to teach these young people in our care how to be good humans and not just outsource all their thinking to these generative AI tools. And some of the early research that has come out is really interesting. They did a brain scan on people who wrote essays with using generative AI and those who did not. And what they found is that when people started the writing process without using a generative AI tool, that more of their brain lit up with activity, as opposed to those who are using generative AI, a smaller part of their brain was lighting up, which speaks to the fact if we want students to really engage with what they're learning, then the best way to do that is not have them use the tools and engage and think about it. And then once they've done that initial work themselves and made all those neural connections, only then do they bring in generative AI to then take them the next the next step even further. But if we do it too early in the learning process, then we're essentially outsourcing those neural connections to a large language model on some server farm.
Do you think
Okay,
it's
like
possible?
there's so much there, Jason.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna take two questions, and you get another chance, Garth.
Okay.
Okay. So my first question is, I'm gonna come back to that point. I got one before that. You said a word way earlier in the interview. I want to come back to. You said the post-plagiarism era, something along those lines.
Landscape.
Myke, define that landscape. Define that for our listeners, and what do you think the implications of post-plagiarism landscape is?
Yeah, so first, post-plagiarism was coined by a scholar, Sarah Eaton, at the University of Calgary, and she coined that even before generative AI came out, and her work on generative AI and academic integrity is superb, and I encourage any listeners to look it up, Sarah Eaton, and she has lots of stuff online. And her conception of post-plagiarism is really looking at a landscape where human-AI collaboration becomes the norm. And in that are traditional conceptions of plagiarism, which is somebody takes something that's not theirs, hands it in or submits it and says it's their own. That is this traditional definition of plagiarism. We generally understand that. What's interesting with human AI collaborative writing is that you're not actually plagiarizing from anybody. You're not plagiarizing from anybody. but it also is not 100% your own work. And so really have to then redefine what it looks like in a world where increasingly more and more stuff that we're reading, especially if you're reading a lot of stuff online, so much is now synthetic AI generated content or content that has been human AI written. And so we just have to redefine what it looks like. And so there's a lot of different components of post-plagiarism, and which I probably don't have time to go into now, but I really encourage people to look it up. And Sarah Eden has done some great work on it.
And my second question before I give back to Garth is, Myke, do you think it's possible? Like, do you think it's possible to convince people that their neural network is more important than using AI to support them in the early learning? And I hope you think it's possible. And if it is possible, what's the language we use to help our youth understand the importance of this abstract biological concept which you put forward with respect to neural networks? So I guess my question is it possible?
Yeah, great question. Let me give you two metaphors that might help, particularly when you're speaking with kids about it. One is that, if you go to a warehouse, you have a lot of heavy boxes to move from one side of the warehouse to the other. You can do it by hand, and humans are really good at carrying boxes. Like, the body is well adapted to carrying a box. However, it's a warehouse, and to be safe and more efficient, you use a forklift and you move all the boxes from one side to the other. It's safe and more efficient. Great. But when you go to the gym, you don't take your forklift to do your bicep curls. You do the bicep curls as a human because it's important to do it as a human. Likewise, in schooling, we should do things that are human important as a human.
Mm-hmm.
You have to write a birthday card to your mom. You don't get AI to write it. Part of the joy is that you have done it as a human.
Mm-hmm.
The other metaphor, which I find really interesting, is that if we have students use generative AI to produce work, the work that comes to us as educators looks like the student knows what they're talking about. But really, it's just a Potemkin village. And the Potemkin village is this ancient, this concept that happened during Catherine the Great in Russia. When Catherine the Great was, going through the countryside in this train, there was a district administrator who really wanted to impress the empress. And so what he did is he erected these fake facade villages. And so when she, oh, wow, such nice villages. And then when she went to sleep at night, they'd dismantle them, run them down the tracks, and then re-erect them. And so she said, oh, another nice village, such nice villages in this district, governor. So too with student work. If they just produce things that looks like they understand something, it's just a facade, a Potemkin village, because behind that, there's no understanding at all. It's just being produced by a large language model and submitted.
That is helpful, Myke. Both of those are right on point.
And so, Myke, I'm interested in your approach. How will you leverage AI, and how will you leverage your understanding of AI to support teachers in this post-plagiarism world? And let me just say, this concept of a Potemkin village, your understanding or your articulation of what human important work is, there is a challenge to our education system as we know it. How will you, lead a school in the necessary work to embolden and inspire our students to do that human work of critical thinking, while at the same time saying this is something we can't ignore. It does have usefulness to it. Tell us more.
Yeah. I mean, you articulated Garth so well. Like, that is exactly the needle that we got to thread. How we're going to do it is going to take lots of different ways. I think talking in metaphors is helpful. I think even showing in an age and stage appropriate way the brain science of what happens when you just use large language models to produce your work as opposed to doing it yourself. Because it's sort of hard to argue that if we are in schools and our business is helping to educate this next generation, and you see, well, their brain isn't lighting up with what we're asking students to do because they're just processing a large language model, that why are we even here? And so I think my job as a leader is to articulate what's important for humans to do and for students to understand. And then how do we, once we do that fundamental work as humans, then how do we use these cool tools to then take us even further than we could before? Because now we have them. And knowing like when to introduce, and I think it'll be important for schools, especially in a K-12 space, like at what grade and what tools do you start to, and when do you start to do different tools along that journey?
I think that's such important questions to ask ourselves. And and I love that your answer are more questions, because that's kind of where we're at right now. One thing that I'm considering, because we had a great guest on, Kurt Gray, who wrote Outraged, and he talks a lot about the neuroscience behind these these just fiery emotions that we have, and in that conversation we talked about the difference between emotions and facts and the value of storytelling. And I think for me, part of my leadership is just collecting these stories of why and how education needs to change, why we need to focus on the human work, the human important work that you've listed here, which includes, as you said earlier, eye contact, it includes manners, it includes effort, it includes the willingness to say, not yet, generative AI, not yet. So I love these questions that you've helped us to consider. Thank you.
I'll just turn back to you, Myke, for the kind of last word on AI. You're going to give advice to school leaders from across Canada right now, and you've got about an elevator ride to do it. What's the best advice you're going to give to school leaders in dealing with generative AI in the coming school year? What would you tell them?
First, use it yourself. You got to understand how powerful these tools are. And we know when you type into something to ChatGPT that, the answer that it gives you seems pretty coherent, but there's other tools that will answer, in text in different ways. But then also start to play with the video generation models where, you can make a short form video from a text prompt alone. I did an activity just this past week in Winnipeg where I created a number of videos using Google's new VO3 and then had people in the audience assess whether it was real or AI. And I did about 6 videos and it was like a 50-50 split each time. That really a human's ability to know whether something is AI generated or human generated is a coin flip now. And so to think that we have this ability to know something is AI or not, we can't. And so going as school leaders, we need to go into a sense that if we really believe in academic integrity and students doing things themselves and learning as humans, then we either have to change the way we teach and assess to as much as possible, get to the human showing what they know and the skills they can do, because these tools can just do so much for them now that cannot be reliably detected.
And I'll jump in, listeners, if you are as enraptured by this as and enchanted by this as Jason and I are. Myke's work is available on LinkedIn. If you're a CIS Ontario educator, you can go to CIS Ontario Connect's website. You can access his keynote address. And he also teaches the Case LI module on education programming. Do you still teach that, Myke?
I do.
Because in that program, in that session that I was in, you held up student artwork and you said, which is AI and which is student artwork? And it wasn't about getting the answer right. It was like understanding, now that we have this question, how are you going to change your education program? So I think that's the story. These are the stories we need to start telling. So I just love it. Listen, this has been a deeply inspiring conversation. Heads, hands, and heart in leadership, research, innovation are truly a model for us all. This is not the last we will hear of Myke Healy, I am sure, on a number of these subjects. We're going to have you back on, maybe next June as you're preparing, for your big move into your new role. And congratulations again.
Cheers, gentlemen.
All right, Myke, as we wrap up the show, we always ask one last question. I know you're a little bit familiar with Ted Lasso, and after all, he's the namesake of this podcast. Do you think, just for our listeners, this is just an ongoing debate we're having, do you think Ted's a good leader?
Look, if you don't like Ted Lasso, you have a heart of stone. That's all I'm going to say. Because for me, I'm sure lots of your guests have said lots of great things about Ted Lasso, but I think what most stands out for me is that he is a compassionate leader and leads with heart. And we just know that in schools, authentic, relational, compassionate, heart-centered leadership is really so essential to greatness in the school building. And so that's what I take from him.
Hear, hear. I think that's a great summary of all the best and worst parts of leadership with respect to AI and all the things we need to lean in on and supporting our students and being as human as they can in this generation as we move ahead. With that, Myke, we are so thankful for you being on the show, and we do wish you all the best this year and into your next chapter starting next year. And if you could do us the honor of taking us home, we'd really appreciate that.
Well, until next time, team, keep leading the lasso way.
Thanks.
All right.
Myke.
Thanks, Myke. Thanks for
everybody.
joining us. Thanks,
Alan.
everyone.
Grab your coffee, grab your seat. It's time to learn, it's time to meet. Garth and Jason setting the tone. Leadership lessons to take back home. Lassoing leadership, sharp and true. Beard's Book Club got wisdom for you. Turn the pages, let the stories flow. Unpacking lessons as we grow. Keep leading the lasso way. Together we'll grow stronger every day. So plug in your headphones and let's start the show. With lessons from Ted, we'll learn and grow. Lassoing leadership, sharp and true. Beard's Book Club got wisdom for you. Turn the pages, let the stories flow. Unpack